Hey everybody, this started out as a VR to Nick Wu 2, a friend of mine, knife maker here on YouTube, and please do check out his channel. Nick just successfully forged some Damascus, and very cool buddy, excellent job. He had a couple challenges, and so I wanted to do a VR for him, and then I thought, you know what, I'll make this public just because it kind of turned into a little bit of a tutorial on forging some simple Damascus, and people have been asking me about that. One thing, Nick, it looks like to me from watching your video that the little bit of problem that you had with some crumbling of that steel, I wrote it in the comments, is caused by something called red short, or red shorting the steel. And that usually occurs when you forge steel in high sulfur coal. So I live in Ohio, and most of the coal from Ohio is high sulfur coal. And so in high carbon tool steels, when you're forging in that, the sulfur migrates into the steel, especially Damascus. You got the layers, and the sulfur can get in there, and then when you forge weld, it amalgamates into the steel. And that causes brittleness, and it'll cause steel to crumble. So again, when I was using a lot of coal to forge, I used non-sulfur or very low sulfur blacksmith coal and coke. So it also can happen sometimes when you're forging at too high a temperature with some steels. So you want to get up to welding heat, weld, but then don't do a lot of forging at that welding heat. Let the steel cool down to a forging red, orange color, and then forge your steel. So anyway, I just wanted to show you a little bit of the process of what I do for making some simple Damascus. Check it out. So what I've got here is just some different pieces of steel. These are pieces from an old metal cutting bandsaw blade. It's a bimetal blade, so it has, where these teeth are, this is actually a piece of metal that's welded on to just a high carbon spring steel that makes up the body of the blade, and then the harder teeth, are welded on. And then this is a piece of a bigger bandsaw blade that was made for wood cutting, and this is a blade that was integral. In other words, the teeth are made out of the same thing as the body, and it's from Hitachi. This is an L6 steel, or L6 equivalent, which means this has a lot of nickel in it. And so what we're always wanting to do is use two contrasting steels. And as you can see, this stock is really thin, so the only consideration we have for this is making sure that it's really flat together when we're making the Damascus, and that it's easier to burn the outer layers of the steel when we're using thin stock like this. But this is going to give us our contrast, so we want to, and again, ideally these should be exactly the same size, but this is just a down and dirty demonstration here. But so we'll stack these like this, every other layer, like that. And then we need something to hold this together when it's going to be welded up into a billet. So as you can see, it's going to be about that thick. And how many was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers. So other thing we've done, surface preparation. You can see that with each of these I've run both sides of the metal over my grinder, so there's no scale or rust or anything on there, and that's very important to get a clean weld. The metal always has to be real clean, and that's a problem sometimes with delamination, or you get like just a spot somewhere in the steel where you've had an inclusion. In other words, like one of the troubles with forging in coal is, you can imagine, like let's say, for instance, this little washer here represents some dust from the coal, or something like that, some impurities from the coal that get sort of in between your steel. And you can imagine if you weld this up right there where that inclusion is going to be an area when you grind through that it's just black and it cakes out, and then you have a divot kind of in your steel. So keeping the steel really clean, and that's why propane also is a big advantage for forging. But so for that, if you have a welder, you tack weld the ends. Sometimes some people also tack along the length, or if you don't have a welder, or if you have one and you're just doing something small, you can also wrap wire around it. And I use a wire that's softer iron wire that's steel, that's used for holding up suspended ceilings and stuff like that, and just wrap it around and twist it real tight. So, and then the only difficulty with that is you have to hold it in a pair of tongs when you're welding it. If you have a welder, you can tack it, and then you can weld a piece of rebar on here for a handle, and that makes things certainly easier. Okay, so what you can see is I actually just bought a little wire feed welder because I was tired of wiring Damascus together, but I just welded it onto this piece of rebar. First I tacked it, then welded it onto this piece of rebar, then just clamped it up and welded this tip. So you can see it's nice and flat. There's still space, a little bit of space in between, and even if these were really tight together, when you flux this in the forge, the capillary action caused by the two pieces of steel together suck the flux in between and clean everything out, so you don't have to worry about that. Kind of like, I don't know if you ever did this in school, where you take two glass microscope slides and you put a drop of water on one and it just kind of sits there, but as soon as you put another slide on top of it, the water instantly diffuses and the capillary action sucks the water so that it's completely flat between the two slides. So that's what's going to happen with the flux, and so this will be ready to weld up. Just got rebar handle, and going to heat it up till it's red. Take it out and flux it so that we don't get oxidation. And the flux, what it does, just melts over it and just keeps oxygen away, and then forces impurities out as well, when we weld. So the first thing I do is fire up my forge, and you can see I'm running off of this propane tank. And it's a little extra larger one, it works just great. So I'm spreading some flux on now, and I'm using powdered borax. And just get it nice and fluxed. That's what it looks like, and then it's going to go back in, and I'm going to put it up to welding heat. So what I'm watching for now is not just the color of the steel, but I'm watching to see for the borax to start bubbling. It actually starts boiling. It looks like hot oil bubbling on top of the blade, and that's how I know it's ready to forge weld. I just hit it, tap it down real good. And that's what it looks like. So that's our first weld, and that's 7 layers of steel. I'm going to flatten it a little bit, and then we're going to take it into the grinder here and grind the scale off, because we're going to do one more layer. We're going to cut it almost in half and bend it. So we want to get all of the slag off and have pretty clean steel for welding. So this is what it looks like here, and it could even be cleaner, but this is just for demonstration purposes. So the next thing I do is I measure and make a mark at the halfway point, and then I take my angle grinder with a cutoff wheel and just cut almost through the steel right at that mark, and we're going to bend this backwards right at that spot to get our second layer. So I've just bent it over and I'm tapping it down. I'm not trying to weld. I'm just getting it forged down on itself as another layer. And then that's what it looks like fluxed up. You can see I've folded the billet back on top of itself. And now it's going to go back in the forge. And again, what I'm watching for is I'm watching for the flux to start really boiling. See lots of small bubbles boiling off, and it's so bright in there you can't, it's very, very difficult to see it in this video. But that's there, you can see just the flux bubbling a little bit. And I'm going to take it back over to the anvil and quickly hit it. You hear it kind of pop. That's the steel welding on top of itself. Not forging it too much right now, just letting it cool down a little bit, and then forging it to shape. I just cut off a piece of the rebar to use as the handle, and just taking it now and sort of freestyling, just grinding a knife shape. I haven't drawn it out or designed it, I'm just freestyling on the grind. And this is a lot of fun. So the rebar, just flatten it out with some forging, and now I'll make a blade shape. So after heat treating and tempering the blade and a little polishing with steel wool, it goes into the ferric chloride and get a really nice result. You can see the pattern nice and clear, and if you look real close you can even see some of the teeth from the bandsaw blade. Looks really cool down at near the choil, and turned out pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed that. It's kind of one of those things a little bit tough to see on video. It's better to see in person, but the next best thing, I guess, to come to Sugar Creek and forging with me is to see it on video. So again, this turned out to be just a fun, little knife to make. Really didn't take long to forge, and just kind of cool. So hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. Everyone have a great weekend.